The wind howled across the broken land. The sky was dark, painted with smoke and strange colors that did not belong to Earth. The ground was full of cracks, burned metal, and the ruins of machines that once moved with power. It was not a place for humans. It was a graveyard of war, a place where death walked quietly. Among the ruins, a man walked slowly, his boots pressed into the ash, leaving deep marks with every step. His clothes were torn, and his face carried dust and scars. He was tired, but his eyes were sharp, scanning every shadow. He knew this world was dangerous. He knew he should not be here, but he had nowhere else to go. For hours, he searched the wreckage. Broken alien ships lay in pieces, strange metal glowing faintly in the darkness. He had seen war before, but nothing like this. This was not just a battle. It was something far worse, something that erased entire cities and left only silence behind. The man stopped and listened. The land was quiet. Too quiet. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. He felt the weight of loneliness pressing on his chest. And then, he heard it. A sound. Soft. Fragile. Almost impossible. It was a voice. Help. The man froze. His heart jumped. He raised his weapon, scanning the ruins. The voice was small, weak, like a whisper carried by the wind. He moved closer, his steps careful and slow. Help me. The sound came from behind a broken wall of alien stone. He stepped around it, ready for danger, ready for a trap. But what he saw made his hands shake. A child. She was small, no older than 6 or 7 in human years. But she was not human. Her skin had a soft glow, pale like the moonlight. Her hair was thin, almost silver, and her eyes were large and bright, like tiny stars trapped in her face. She looked up at him, afraid, but also hopeful. Dust covered her little body and her clothes were torn. She hugged a broken piece of cloth as if it was her only shield. The man lowered his weapon. For a moment he forgot where he was. He forgot the war. He only saw her. Her lips trembled, and then she spoke. With her little voice, broken but clear, she said, "Will you be my father?" The words struck him harder than any bullet. He stared at her, unable to speak. 1,000 thoughts ran through his mind. Why would she say that? Did she even understand what those words meant? The child's eyes filled with tears. She reached out her tiny hand, shaking. She was alone, lost and afraid. She had nothing, no one. The man felt something deep inside him, something he had long buried. He had fought many battles. He had lost friends, family, and even his own sense of hope. He had promised himself never to feel again. Never to care again. Caring was dangerous. Caring made you weak. But here she was. A little girl, looking at him with trust, calling him something he had not been in years. Father. He looked away, his chest heavy. He wanted to walk. He wanted to say no. But his feet would not move. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the wind. Finally, he took a step forward. Then another. Slowly, he bent down and looked into her eyes. Her small hand still reached for him. He stared at it for a long time. Then, almost against his own will, he reached out and held it. Her hand was cold but soft. In that moment, something changed. He did not answer her question with words. He only stayed. He did not let go of her hand. The child gave a weak smile. Her tears stopped. She leaned closer to him as if his presence alone was enough to keep the monsters of the world away. The man knew he had just made a choice. He had stepped into a story bigger than himself. He had taken a path that would not end easily. The wind blew harder, carrying distant sounds of movement. Danger was close. He knew they had to move. But for the first time in years, he did not feel alone. He lifted the child into his arms. She held onto him tightly, resting her head on his shoulder. The battlefield was still dark, still broken, but something inside him had changed. He was no longer just a survivor. He was a protector. And as he looked at the child in his arms, he whispered quietly, almost to himself, "I will stay by your side." The world around them remained full of fear and shadows, but a spark had been lit. A spark that would grow into something powerful, something dangerous, and something unforgettable. The story of man and child had begun. The man walked through the ruins with the child in his arms. The land stretched endlessly, a sea of broken ships and shattered machines. Strange fires still burned in the distance, and the smell of smoke filled the air. Every step he took echoed against the silence, reminding him that he was not supposed to be here. The child held onto his neck tightly, her little hands trembling. She did not speak. Her head rested on his shoulder, her breathing soft but heavy. The man could feel how weak she was. She needed food, water, and safety, things he could not promise. He stopped and looked at her face. Her large eyes slowly opened, glowing faintly in the darkness. They were not human eyes, but they carried something familiar, something innocent. She trusted him already, even though they had met only minutes ago, and that was the problem. The man took a deep breath. He should leave her. He knew it. He told himself again and again. This world was no place for a child. He was no father. He was no protector. He was only a man who had seen too much death. "Why me?" he whispered to himself. The child stirred and opened her mouth. Her voice was small, broken, but clear. "You stay?" The words cut into his heart. He looked away, pretending he had not heard. His steps grew heavier, like he was walking with chains around his legs. They reached a broken wall of alien stone. Behind it, he placed her gently on the ground. She looked up at him, confused, as if she already feared what he was about to do. The man pulled out a small piece of bread from his bag, the last bit he had left. He gave it to her without a word. She smiled faintly and began to eat slowly, carefully, as if she had not eaten in days. He watched her, and for the first time in a long while he felt something strange. Warmth, a tiny spark in the middle of endless cold. But then he shook his head. "This is madness," he muttered. "She's not mine. She's not even human. She'll only bring trouble. I can't do this." His mind screamed at him to walk away, to leave her behind before it was too late. But his heart told a different story. The silence was broken by a sharp sound in the distance. The man froze. It was not the wind. It was movement, heavy, metallic, and close. He grabbed his weapon and scanned the shadows. The child looked up at him with wide eyes. She felt it too. The sound grew louder. Something was coming, something searching. The man's chest tightened. If he stayed with the girl, he would be hunted. If he left her, he might live. The choice stood clear before him. Life or death, safety or danger. And then he remembered her words. "Will you be my father?" He clenched his teeth. He hated those words. They were too heavy, too dangerous, but they echoed in his head like a bell he could not silence. The sound of metal grew closer. Strange voices carried through the air. Alien hunters. They were tracking survivors, killing anyone they found. The man's hands shook. He looked at the girl. She looked back, holding the piece of bread close, her eyes full of silent fear. He knew then. Walking away was no longer possible. He took a deep breath and whispered, "Yes, I'll stay." The child tilted her head, not fully understanding, but she smiled. That tiny smile burned into his heart like fire. The noise of the hunters grew, louder. The man pulled her close and whispered, "Quiet." They crouched low behind the wall, shadows passing nearby. Strange shapes moved, tall and armored, scanning the ruins with glowing eyes. The hunters spoke in a harsh alien tongue, their voices sharp like knives. The child pressed her face against his chest. He wrapped his arm around her, steadying his breath, trying to stay calm. One of the hunters stopped. Its head turned toward the wall where they hid. The man's heart raced. He tightened his grip on his weapon. If they were discovered, it would be the end. The alien sniffed the air, clicking its tongue. Then, after a long silence, it turned away. Slowly, the hunters moved on, their footsteps fading into the distance. The man exhaled, sweat running down his face. They had survived. He looked down at the girl. She was still clinging to him, her small body shaking. In that moment, he knew his choice was final. He would not leave her. He would not abandon her. The world was full of enemies, full of death, but he had made his decision. It was dangerous. It was foolish. But it was also the only choice his heart would allow. He picked her up again and whispered softly, "From now on, I'll protect you." The child's eyes sparkled as she whispered back, "Father." The man felt the word pierce him like a blade. But this time he did not push it away. He carried her through the ruins, the shadows watching, the dangers waiting. He knew the road ahead would be hard, but his decision was made. He had chosen the child, and that choice would change everything. The night settled over the ruined land like a heavy blanket. The fires in the distance burned weaker now, their glow fading into shadows. The man built no fire, made no noise, and kept the child close to him. He knew the darkness carried dangers that were far worse than the light. The child lay against his chest, her breathing soft, her little body finally resting. For hours she had not spoken, but even in sleep, her hands held on to him tightly as if she feared he would disappear if she let go. The man sat still, his weapon across his knees, his eyes scanning the ruins. He had been in many battles, had slept in many dangerous places, but this felt different. He was no longer alone. His life was not only his own now. A sound broke the silence. At first it was faint, like a soft hum carried on the wind, but then it grew, louder, sharper, mechanical. The man stiffened. He knew that sound. It was a patrol. He shook the child, gently. "Wake up," he whispered. Her eyes opened slowly, still heavy with sleep. But the moment she heard the sound, she froze. Fear filled her bright eyes. She knew what was coming. The man pulled her close and crouched behind a large piece of broken metal. The sound grew clearer, heavy footsteps, metallic claws scraping against stone. Voices, strange, cruel, and sharp. The hunters had returned. Through the cracks in the wreckage, the man saw them, tall creatures with armor that glowed faintly in the dark. Their eyes were red, scanning every shadow, every corner. They carried weapons that hummed with deadly energy. The child buried her face into his chest. Her small body trembled. The man pressed a finger to his lips, though she could not see it. "Quiet," he breathed. The hunters spread out, their claws clicking against the ground. One of them knelt and pressed its hand against the dirt. It growled something in its alien tongue, and the others stopped. They had found something. The man's pulse quickened. He looked around. There was no escape. The hunters were too close, and the ruins were open. If they ran, they would be seen. He tightened his grip on his weapon. If they were found, he would fight. He would not let them take her. One of the hunters turned and walked toward their hiding place. Its steps were slow but heavy, each one shaking the ground. Its glowing eyes scanned the wreckage, moving closer. Closer. The man held his breath. His finger rested on the trigger. The child suddenly lifted her head. Her eyes glowed faintly, brighter than before. She whispered something, words he could not understand. The air shifted. A strange hum passed through the ruins. The hunter stopped. Its red eyes blinked, confused. It looked around as if it had lost the trail. It growled in frustration, then turned away and walked back to the others. The man stared at the child. She was still whispering, her lips moving quickly, her voice soft but filled with power. The hunters began to leave, their voices echoing in the distance. One by one, their glowing eyes faded into the dark, until the night was silent again. Tatum, child stopped whispering and leaned weakly against him. Her glow faded and her breathing grew shallow as if the strange act had taken all her strength. The man held her close, his mind racing. What was that? He whispered, but she gave no answer. She only closed her eyes, tired and weak. He sat in silence, his thoughts heavy. She was not just a child. He had known it the moment he saw her glowing eyes, the moment she spoke words too heavy for one so small. She carried something inside her, something powerful, something dangerous. And now he understood why the hunters wanted her. He looked at the dark sky above, the stars hidden behind smoke and ash. He had made a choice to protect her, but that choice was bigger than he realized. Protecting her meant fighting not only against the hunters, but against something greater, something that could destroy him and everyone else. Yet when he looked at her, sleeping peacefully in his arms, he felt the same spark he had felt before. He could not leave her. No matter what she was, no matter what danger she carried, she was still a child. His child now. The night stretched on, long and restless. Every sound made him tense. Every shadow felt alive. But he held her close and kept his weapon ready. When dawn finally came, the ruins were painted in a pale, cold light. The fires had died, leaving smoke that rose weakly into the sky. The man stood, lifting the child into his arms once again. She did not wake. Her head rested against his shoulder, her body light as a feather. He looked around at the broken world. The hunters would return. More would come, they would never stop. But neither would he. He walked into the new day with one thought in his mind. He had faced the first threat. He had survived the night. But this was only the beginning. And the world was not ready for what the little girl carried inside her. The morning sun struggled to break through the gray clouds. The ruins of the battlefield stretched far and wide, endless metal bones scattered across the land. The man moved carefully, carrying the girl in his arms. She was light, almost too light, as if the world had already taken much from her. Her breathing was soft but uneven. She had not spoken since the night before when her strange whisper had driven the hunters away. The memory of it haunted him. He had fought enemies of every kind, but he had never seen anything like that. He looked down at her face. Her eyes were closed, her silver hair tangled and covered with ash. She looked like any lost child, fragile and innocent. But he knew better, now. She was not ordinary. Something about her was hidden, something dangerous. He found shelter inside the hollow shell of a broken ship. Its walls were cracked, but it was enough to give them rest. He set her down gently on a piece of cloth and searched through his bag. A little water, some crumbs of bread, barely enough to keep either of them alive. He offered her the water. First. Her eyes opened slowly, glowing faintly in the dim light. She drank carefully, her small hands shaking. "Better?" he asked. She nodded weakly. Then, after a pause, she spoke. "They hunt me." Her voice was soft, broken, but her words carried weight. The man leaned closer. "Why?" he asked. The child's eyes looked far away, as if she saw something beyond the broken walls around them. "I remember things. Not mine. Old things. Before me. Long before." The man frowned. "Memories?" She nodded again. "Voices. Lights. Secrets, they told me. I must not live." Her words sent a chill down his spine. A child speaking of voices and secrets older than herself. It was unnatural. "Who told you that?" he asked. "The ones before. The ones who made me." The man felt his throat tighten. He had heard stories, rumors whispered among soldiers about alien experiments, about children who were not really children. He had never believed them, but now, looking at her glowing eyes, he could not deny it. He sat back, his mind racing. If what she said was true, she was carrying something powerful inside her, something that entire armies would kill to erase. The girl reached out and touched his hand. Her little fingers were cold, but her grip was steady. They want me gone, but you stayed." Her words cut into him like a blade. He had stayed, yes, but now he questioned himself. Could he protect her from what was coming? Could he protect her from what she was? "Why call me father?" he asked suddenly. She blinked, her glowing eyes soft. "Because you did not leave. Fathers don't leave." The man turned his face away, hiding the storm in his chest. He had once been a father. Long ago, before war took everything, he had buried that pain deep inside, but now this small child was tearing it open again. Before he could answer, a sound echoed outside. Heavy footsteps, voices. The hunters were back. The man grabbed his weapon and crouched low. The girl pressed against him, fear in her eyes. But then her lips moved again. She whispered words in that strange, ancient tongue. The walls of the broken ship vibrated faintly. The air itself seemed to hum. The man grabbed her shoulder. "Stop, they'll hear." She shook her head. "They cannot. Hide us." He looked around, and to his shock the shadows shifted. The glow of the hunter's red eyes passed nearby, scanning, searching, but not seeing them. It was as if the girl had wrapped them in a veil of silence. Minutes passed like hours until finally the hunters moved away. Their voices faded into the distance. The man let out a shaky breath. "What did you do?" The girl's face grew pale. "I don't know. It just happens." Her small body trembled as if using that power drained her strength. She leaned against him, closing her eyes again. The man stared at her, his thoughts heavy. He had wanted to believe she was just a lost child. But now, the truth was clear. She was more than that. She was something created, something ancient, something that could not be allowed to fall into the wrong hands. He felt the weight of his choice more than ever. Protecting her was no longer just about kindness. It was about survival. His, hers, and maybe even humanity's. He brushed the hair from her face and whispered, "Whatever you are, they won't take you. Not while I live." Her eyes opened weakly, and for the first time she smiled. Not the smile of someone powerful, not the smile of something strange, but the smile of a child who felt safe. The man felt something stir inside him, something he had buried long ago. Hope. The world outside remained broken, full of enemies and shadows. But inside that broken ship, a promise was born. A promise that would change everything. The morning light was weak, filtered through clouds of smoke that still clung to the ruined land. The man walked quickly, the girl in his arms. Every shadow felt dangerous, every sound a warning. He knew the hunters would not stop. They would come again, stronger, faster, and in greater numbers. The girl rested her head against his chest, her small arms wrapped around him. She did not speak, but he could feel the fear inside her. Her body trembled each time a distant sound echoed across the battlefield. They had no safe place to go. The world around them was broken. The man thought of leaving the ruins behind, of finding a valley or cave far from the patrol routes. But he knew it would not be enough. The hunters had ways of finding what they wanted, and they wanted her. He tightened his grip on his weapon as he walked. His promise echoed in his mind. Not while I live. The ground shook suddenly. A loud crash thundered across the ruins. He stopped, eyes scanning the horizon. Smoke rose from the far side of the battlefield. Shapes moved within it. Tall, glowing shapes. "They've found us," he whispered. The girl's eyes opened, glowing faintly. She clutched his shirt tightly. "Run," she said, and he ran. Through broken ships, over piles of metal, past walls of stone, he ran with all the strength left in his body. The girl held on, silent but afraid. Behind them, the sound of pursuit grew louder. The hunters were fast. Their voices carried across the ruins, sharp and cruel. The sound of their weapons hummed in the air. The man turned a corner and ducked into the remains of a building. He pressed against the wall, his breath heavy, his heart racing. He peeked through a crack. 3 hunters moved across the ruins, scanning with their glowing eyes. Their armor glistened in the pale light, their weapons charged and ready. The man knew he could not outrun them forever. He had to fight. He set the girl down gently behind a broken pillar. "Stay here. Don't move," he whispered. Her eyes filled with fear. "No. They will hurt you." He touched her cheek, his rough hand soft against her glowing skin. "I will not fall. Not while you need me." The girl's eyes watered, but she nodded. The man stepped out from the shadows, raising his weapon. He fired. The first hunter fell, sparks flying from its chest. The others turned, their red eyes locking onto him. They roared in their alien tongue and charged. The man fired again, hitting one in the shoulder. It stumbled but did not fall. The third raised its weapon and shot. The blast struck the wall beside him, shaking the ground. The man dove behind cover, breathing hard. He had only a few shots left. He glanced back at the girl. She was watching him, her eyes wide with fear. The hunters moved closer, their heavy footsteps echoing. The man prepared for his last stand. But then the girl stood, her small body glowed brighter than before. She lifted her hands, her lips moving, whispering words in the strange ancient tongue. The air changed, the ground vibrated. A low hum filled the ruins. The hunters stopped, confused. Their eyes flickered as if something disturbed their vision. One of them roared and fired at her, but the blast bent away, curving into the broken wall instead. The girl's glow grew stronger. A wave of invisible energy pushed outward. The hunters staggered, their weapons sparking. The man watched in shock. She was not just hiding them now. She was fighting. With a final whisper, the girl released a burst of power. The ground cracked and the hunters were thrown back, crashing into the ruins with a sound like thunder. The glow faded. The girl fell to her knees, her body weak, her breath heavy. The man rushed to her, lifting her into his arms. "You're safe," he whispered. "I've got you." She shook her head faintly. "No, not safe. More will come." And she was right. In the distance, more voices echoed. More glowing eyes appeared. The hunters were endless. The man carried her and ran again. His legs burned, his lungs screamed, but he did not stop. The girl's power had saved them, but it had also revealed them. The hunters now knew exactly where she was. The chase had begun. Through the ruins, across broken bridges of stone and metal, he ran with her. Behind them, the hunters followed, closer. With every step, the girl lifted her head weakly. "Why? Why don't you leave me?" she whispered. He looked down at her, his jaw tight. "Because you asked me to stay, and I gave you my word." Her eyes softened, and she rested against him once more. The world around them blurred as the chase continued. Dust rose with every step. Fire burned in the distance, and the sound of their enemies echoed louder and louder. The man knew there would be no rest, no safety, not while they hunted her. But he also knew something else. He would never give her up. The bond between them was no longer a choice. It was a truth. And in that truth, he found his strength. The ruins grew darker as night returned. Smoke curled in the distance, and the cries of the hunters echoed through the broken land. The man moved quickly, his breath heavy, carrying the girl in his arms. He had run all day, but it was not enough. No matter how far he went, their enemies followed. The girl was weak. Her small head rested against his shoulder, her eyes half closed, glowing faintly. Every time she used her strange power, it drained her. The man could feel her heartbeat against his chest, soft, fragile, slowing. He stopped inside the remains of a great metal tower. Its walls were torn open, its roof half collapsed, but it gave them cover for the night. He set her down gently, against a wall, and sat beside her. The girl looked up at him with tired eyes. "They will not stop," she whispered. He nodded. "I know." Her lips trembled. They want me because I am not only a child, I carry something. The man turned his head, watching her carefully. He had known this truth, but now he needed to hear it from her. "What do you carry?" he asked softly. Her small hands shook as she touched her chest. A code, a memory, a voice from the ones before. They put it inside me. It can save your kind, or end it. The word struck him like a blade. Save humanity, or destroy it. The hunters were not only chasing a lost child, they were chasing a key, a secret too dangerous to exist. The girl lowered her head. "If they take me, they will use it to kill. If I stay with you, they will never stop. And if I release it, I don't know what will happen." The man sat in silence, his chest heavy. The choice before him was clear. He could give her up, and the hunters would stop chasing him. Or he could protect her and risk war that might never end. His hand trembled as he looked at her. She was so small, so fragile. She should have been playing, laughing, living a simple life. Instead, she carried a weight no child should ever know. The girl's voice broke the silence. "You can leave me. I don't want you to die because of me." The man clenched his fists. His eyes burned as he looked at her. "Do you think I could leave you now? After all this? After you called me father?" Her eyes filled with tears. "But you will suffer." He shook his head. "I've suffered before. I've lost before. But I will not lose you." The girl reached for his hand and he held it tightly. Her fingers were cold, but her touch carried warmth into his heart. The night outside grew louder. The hunters were close again. Their voices echoed, their claws scraped against stone. The man stood, lifting his weapon. He knew what he had to do. The girl looked up at him with fear. "What will you choose?" He looked back at her, his face hard, his voice steady. "I choose you." Her eyes widened, glowing brighter with emotion. A single tear rolled down her cheek. The hunters broke into the tower. Red eyes lit the darkness, weapons glowing, voices sharp. The man raised his weapon. He stood between the girl and the hunters, his body a shield, his heart filled with fire. The hunters roared and charged. The man fired, the blasts lighting up the ruins. He moved with strength he did not know he still carried. He fought not for survival, but for her. The girl cried out, her voice filled with fear and power. Her glow returned, brighter than ever before. The ground shook, the air burned, and a force spread outward from her small body. The hunters staggered, their armor cracking, their weapons failing. The man stood firm, his choice burning in his chest. He would not give her up. He would not walk away. He had chosen her, and that choice would lead to war. The last hunter roared, stepping forward with its weapon raised. The man aimed, but before he could fire, the girl lifted her hand. Her glow burst into blinding light. The hunter screamed and fell, its body shattering against the ground. Silence returned. The girl collapsed, her glow fading. The man caught her in his arms, holding her close. Her voice was weak, almost gone. "You stayed." He pressed his forehead to hers. "I will always stay." Outside, the night was alive with distant sounds. More enemies were coming. Many more. The choice he had made would bring endless battles. But as he looked at her, he felt no regret. He had chosen to be her father, and no army in the universe would take that away from him. The night sky burned red. Fires rose from the ruins and the UI. Air shook with distant roars. The man stood on the edge of a broken cliff, the girl in his arms. Below them, the land stretched wide, filled with shadows moving like waves. The hunters had gathered. Their red eyes glowed in the darkness, thousands of them waiting. The girl stirred weakly. Her voice was soft, trembling. "They are here. All of them." The man nodded, his jaw tightened, his grip firm. He had known this moment would come. The chase had ended, There was no more running. He set her down gently on a rock, brushing her silver hair away from her face. Her eyes glowed faintly, tired, but full of trust. "They will not stop," she whispered. "If they take me, your kind will fall." The man looked at her, his face scarred and tired, but his eyes burned with fire. "Then they will not take you, not while I breathe." The ground shook. The first wave of hunters climbed the cliff. Their claws dug into the stone, their weapons glowing with deadly light. The man lifted his weapon, the last of his ammunition loaded. He knew it would not be enough, but he also knew he did not need enough. He only needed time. Time for her. "Stay behind me," he said firmly. The girl's lips trembled. "You cannot win." He gave her a faint smile. "I don't need to win. I only need to keep my promise." The hunters roared and charged. The man fired. The blasts lit up the night, striking the first wave. 2 fell, then 3, but more replaced them. He moved with speed, his body fueled by something greater than survival. He fought like a father, like a man who had nothing left to lose except the child behind him. His weapon clicked empty. He threw it aside and drew his blade. Sparks flew as steel met alien claws. He fought fiercely, each strike buying another second. The girl cried out, her eyes glowing brighter. Power rippled around her, shaking the ground, but she held it back, her body too weak to release it fully. The man was struck. A claw slashed across his arm. Pain burned, but he did not fall. He pushed forward, his blade cutting through the darkness. More hunters came. Dozens. Hundreds. The girl screamed, her voice filled with light. A wave of energy burst from her, throwing the hunters back. But the glow drained her strength and she collapsed to her knees. The man rushed to her, blood dripping from his wounds. He lifted her in his arms again, holding her close. "They won't stop," she whispered. "If I release it, they will all fall, but so might you." Her meaning was clear. The power inside her could save them or destroy everything, including him. The man looked at her, his chest heavy. He had a choice again. He could tell her to release it, knowing it might end him, or he could keep fighting until there was nothing left. He lifted her chin, forcing her to look into his eyes. "Listen to me. You are not just a weapon. You are not just a secret. You are a child. My child." Her tears glowed as they rolled down her cheeks. "But you will die." He shook his head. "If I fall, it will be because I stood for you. That is all that matters." The hunters closed in again, surrounding them, their weapons raised. The man stood tall, the girl in his arms. He whispered softly in her ear, "Do it. Be who you are. I will not leave you." The girl's body glowed brighter than ever. Her small hands pressed against his chest as if drawing strength from him. Her lips moved, whispering the ancient words one final time. The ground split. The sky opened. A blinding light poured from her, brighter than the sun. The hunters screamed as the wave of power tore through them, shattering their weapons, breaking their bodies, silencing their voices. The man closed his eyes, holding her tight, refusing to let go. The light wrapped around them both, hot, endless, eternal, and then silence. When he opened his eyes again, the battlefield was empty. The hunters were gone. The land was quiet. The air was still. The girl lay in his arms, her glow faded, her breath shallow. "You stayed," she whispered weakly. He pressed his forehead to hers, his tears falling into her silver hair. "I told you. I will always stay." Her small lips curved into a faint smile before her eyes closed. She was not gone, only asleep, safe, in his arms. The man looked out over the silent battlefield. The war was not over. More enemies would come, more battles would be fought. But tonight, they had won. He stood tall, the child in his arms, and began walking toward the horizon. She was not just a burden, not just a weapon. She was the future, and he was her father. Together, They would face whatever came next.